The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
All right, a new week, a new edition of the show. You have found us, Kevin Gorek here with Wooden Sticks on the Talk North Podcast Network. Recording today, as always, from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. It is Stanley Cup time, and so I have planned accordingly. Joe Smith, a good friend of mine and part of the media crew here in the Twin Cities that cover the Minnesota Wild. Travel with him, see him every day at practice. Of course, game days, we share the same press conference room and ask questions of the coaches and players together. And so he's lived it a couple different times with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's seen his team that he covered finish the deal off. We're hoping to see that in the next couple of years here with the Minnesota Wild, who appear to be pretty close. And there are some big things going on in the world of hockey. We'll talk about the start of the Stanley Cup as we record today midweek. We just saw game one in Carolina that was won by the visitors. The Golden Knights take the early lead in the series. We're going to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Wild and Judd Brackett, their ace in terms of amateur scouting, is moving on to the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll get Joe's thoughts on that. And, of course, we're going to talk a little Quinn Hughes and take a look at that Wild roster as Joe Smith and Michael Russo cover it for The Athletic like nobody else. We'll kind of go behind the curtain and take a look at some of the things that need to happen this summer for the Minnesota Wild. And at the very end, we're going to pay tribute to our lost friend, the tragedy from this past season that was back in March with Jessie Pierce and her 3 beautiful kids dying in a house fire. And Gary Bettman, I think, really classy move by the commissioner of the NHL, bringing that up last night in his pre-Stanley Cup presser. So we'll have a lot to talk about with Joe Smith today. I'm going to be rather brief here in my introduction. It's an exciting time to be a hockey fan because we love the Cup and because it is the Cup. It's just a little bittersweet for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Some years you have a dog in the fight. Some years you don't. Being a Wild fan, I mean, we're all looking forward to when our team is on this stage, and I don't think it's far away. But it's hard not to have a little FOMO and a little frustration, especially in terms of Vegas. Like, listen, I think Tortorella is phenomenal for the game. I just get a huge kick out of him, and I think he's a terrific coach. Jack Eichel is one of my favorite players to watch. I think he's excellent. Team USA, the red, white, and blue. I'm all on board. It's great. But I'm sick and tired of a market that's been around as little as Vegas has with the success they've had. Now, they were given a leg up, and they did something with it. Give them credit. They put together an amazing team. They made some very impactful moves, the Eichel move being at maybe the top of that list. Buffalo fans, eat your heart out because the Sabres aren't far off right now either. Eichel looked pretty good in the blue and gold, wouldn't he? Anyway, I digress. It's hard for me with Carolina and Vegas to sit here and really root for either one of these fan bases. We've had professional hockey here since the late 60s in Minnesota, the state of hockey, by the way, a miniature version of Canada, and we've had no Cup and no real Cup love since way back in the 90s with the North Stars and the Penguins in 91. So, yeah, I love the hockey. I love the Cup itself. Like, the moments are incredible. But I have a hard time not being a little frustrated watching this Stanley Cup with 2 warm cities that have already won Cups, that have fan bases that weren't even around when the North Stars were playing. So I'll let them have their fun. I'll watch every minute of it because I love the game so much. but I'm not going to celebrate it when either one of these teams wins. For the record, I went on local radio with PA last week on the Fan and mentioned I thought Vegas plus 145 was the bet in the series. It's one game. I wish I would have driven to Iowa to back that wager up. I didn't do that. I should have because I think winning game one is so big, especially if you can do it on the road. I still think this series goes 6 or 7. I have thought that way all along. I think they're very evenly matched teams. I think they're very well-coached teams, and for the most part, they both look healthy, which is crazy when you think about how long they've been playing. And I think it's going to be an awesome series to watch. It's going to be great hockey. I'm just not going to celebrate whoever wins this cup. So we're going to get to a great conversation with Joe Smith. Before we do that, though, there is no podcast without the people that make this happen, and I'll start with my good friend John Schweitz and the great people of Minnesota Masonic Charities. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Masonic Charities. When you think about the Masons, I get it. You think about the funny hats, those pancake breakfasts, which are phenomenal. My dear friend John Schweitz and I have chatted about this, and it's so much more than that. They've got the Masonic home over in Bloomington. They've got the hospital for the children over at the U of M. They are the largest fraternal organization in terms of charitable needs in our country, and they deserve a ton of recognition. So thank you, Minnesota Masonic Charities, for all you do and for supporting us over here at Talk North, and a special thanks to my good friend, John Schweitz. Also, one of our new sponsors, Lucy Nicotine Pouches. You've heard me talk about Lucy before, and there's a reason it keeps coming up. A bunch of my friends have made the switch to Lucy, and they're calling it a top-notch lip pillow. Their words, not mine. But they're serious. They say it's one of the best pouches on the market. The favorite among my friends seems to be the Lucy Breakers. Each pouch has a crackable flavor capsule that delivers long-lasting, on-demand flavor that doesn't dry out. With flavors like mint, apple cider, and mango, there's plenty to choose from. So whether you're already a pouch person or just curious about why everybody keeps talking about Lucy, give it a try. Not sure where to start? Grab the variety pack. It comes with 6 flavors so you can find the one that fits you the best. Lucy is a top-tier premier nicotine pouch, and according to my buddies, it's not even close. Get 20% off your first order when you buy online at lucy.co/woodensticks with the promo code WoodenSticks. That's lucy.co/woodensticks, promo code WoodenSticks. If you don't want to wait, use the store locator to find out where you can pick up Lucy near you. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of a legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product does contain nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical. How about the great people at Onyx Fish and Onyx Maps?
If you like to hunt or fish, I highly recommend checking out onxmaps.com. Check it out for onxmaps.com/hunt or onxmaps.com/fish. Stop fishing the same lake because it's the only one you know. Onyx Fish lets you filter lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential so you can make a smarter call on where to spend your Saturday before you ever hitch up the trailer. It's only $34.99 for the year, less than a spool of good braid. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onxmaps.com/fish and fish smarter this season.
And our good friends over at Lexus of Wyzetta and Maplewood. Joe Smith from The Athletic, next here on Wooden Sticks. We're back on Wooden Sticks, as always, recording from the Aquarius Home Services studio. The Stanley Cup is underway. It's a perfect time to catch up with my dear friend Joe Smith from The Athletic. Joe, happy Stanley Cup. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's a fun time to be a hockey writer or a hockey fan for sure.
And we got paid off. We're recording this on a Wednesday. Game 1 was last night, so it's fresh on our mind. I mean, I have no dog in the fight. I don't care for either one of these teams, but damn, was that good hockey last night.
From the start, right? The quickest goal and then in the Cup final in history, right? At the start of the game. And then just the Carolina made a push, then Vegas came back, and then just to have it end that way too. Such good storylines with Hurdle scoring the goal, and I know for all my 5 athletic writers that are there, including Mike Russo, they have plenty to write about. But yeah, this is a series that go either way, in my opinion. I know the first salvo was by Vegas, but Carolina has a team that felt this year feels different than previous years. So, but the way Vegas played against Colorado was incredibly impressive, Gorg. I don't know about you, but I think we were talking during that Minnesota-Colorado series. If Minnesota got past that, they could beat Vegas, right? But I don't know. Many people could beat Vegas right now, the way they're playing. So,
yeah, they've won 7 in a row. And to your point, they look like the teams of the past that clogged up the middle, that blocked shots, that played the heavy game. During the regular season when the Wild swept Vegas, and frankly, a couple of those games weren't close, they looked a little bit like they were lost in the woods. And Tortorella coming in, and I know these late season coaching changes don't always work, but I have to say, Joe, and I know reading some of your guys' stuff on The Athletic, this move certainly, I think, has made an incredible difference. In your eyes, what has clicked?
Well, I think overall, I think they needed just a breather or a kind of a reset. Like, they had the talent there and they had the systems there. I don't think Tortorella changed all their systems, but I think they were getting pushed and pushed and pushed so much by Cassidy. I think they kind of just got burned out and it wasn't maybe as much fun anymore. And then all of a sudden you bring in Tortorella, who has that history of being maybe hard on guys or hard on young players. Bobby Brigg is one example. But this is a veteran group that's kind of built for him. He can trust the veteran leadership. He can be kind of hands-off, the guidance counselor, as they call it, I guess. But he gives them structure. He demands a lot from them, but he's also an honest man-to-man conversation kind of guy. He can tell you when he's not playing well, but you also have that respect because he can say it like it is. So I think he came in with kind of like a softer touch in the beginning, said, I don't want to change what you guys have done in the past. You guys have been successful, and let them breathe a little bit. And then once they got their confidence back and their swagger back, then you can kind of tighten it a little bit more on some of the systems and stuff like that. So I think he gave a breath of fresh air for a team that was built and kind of wound too tight. And then all of a sudden now you're seeing everything that Cassidy did really well, which was the systems and X's and O's and all that stuff, plus a team that's playing like they can't be beat right now. So it's a combination, but I think Tortorella, over his history, has shown that he can coach star players. He can give them that leash, but he can push them too. And I think you're seeing the best out of Mitch Marner. You're seeing the best out of Hurdle right now. And I think you're seeing the rest of those guys just really kind of clicking on all cylinders.
Let's talk a little Tortorella, because you and Michael Russo tag team our coverage here locally of the Wild, and we are treated to some great stories. I want to get to your stuff on Judd Brackett here as our conversation continues. But Russo made a comment on the radio here locally the other day that he loves listening to John Tortorella, and he has a good rapport with him, but he's never covered him for an entire season. How well do you know him? How much have you been with him in a press conference? And could you handle a full season or maybe 5-10 seasons of him, or is it better to have some gaps in between, because he can get a little cantankerous?
He can. And when I first started covering hockey was like around as a backup role, kind of 07, 08. So I wasn't the main beat writer, but I was around Tortorella and stuff like that. And so I got to see kind of the glimpses of the snapbacks and stuff like that with reporters. And I think even John Cooper, when I covered him for a long time, like, he's this charismatic, like, wonderful quote, but for day-to-day guys, you're around them every day, you can kind of get on each other's nerves, right? So that's just natural for that to happen. But behind the scenes, like, Tortorella's a really good man. Like, he's really good dude. He's really good to people that obviously he cares about, that the players really do love him. And so I think they have these like kind of these blowbacks with like Larry Brooks and these big moments that are publicized, and he can be a jerk sometimes. He's not a perfect human being. None of us are. I don't like the way he handled the media thing after the last series, right? I don't think that was right. But I think overall, he's a really good coach. He's good at adapting and evolving to that. And so I got to know him in Tampa. Then I would do stories following up after that when he was with Columbus. I got to know him a little bit better there. And then we actually had a conversation like a week before he was hired by Vegas. I was doing a Bobby Brink story, and I called him on the phone. I was in Tampa at the time, and he was in Paso Grill on the beach, where his house is, where he has a place since the Lightning years. And I'm like, hey, do you still want to coach? He goes, oh God, yeah. He's like, I really want to get back into it. I don't know if I'll get another chance because people think I'm too old, or I did this happen in Philly, blah, blah, blah. And then like 6 days later, he got hired by Vegas. And so it was just like, I texted him. I'm like, hey, you could give me a heads up this is happening. He kind of said, laugh out loud. Sorry about that. I got to go, hope all is well. But I think the fire burns, heavy within him. He loves the game. He loves talking about it. And I think there's a certain side of Torts that a lot of people see publicly. A lot of people don't see publicly. But But overall, I think this is something where this could be an incredible last act if it is his last act, right? What a way to go out if you end up winning a Stanley Cup here. But I do think either way, what happens in the series, he'll probably have a job offer in the offseason from somebody, whether it's Vegas or Edmonton or whoever else, because he's definitely struck with the irons hot right now.
I don't think he's going anywhere. Yeah, win or lose, I think he stays in Vegas. And it's funny because, his personality is such that he'll have a job wherever he wants a job, whether it's in coaching or in TV. And I was enjoying watching him doing some work in the studio on TV. How much do you think the experience he had with Team USA on that coaching staff maybe rekindled that fire? Because just from afar, Joe, it looked like everybody, top to bottom, players, management, coaches, because it was a gold medal run, had such a good time over there.
Yeah, it's a life-changing moment for anybody. And he won a cup in Tampa, right? So he has that experience. He goes, I've never seen a celebration like that in my life from players. He's like, I've never seen people so happy. And I think that's something, if you're older or younger, that still kind of invigorates you. It makes you appreciate how special this game is and why you got into it in the first place when you were younger. And so talk to him about that experience too, about the coaching these star players. And he said, I watched Quinn Hughes specifically the whole tournament, how he prepared, how he taped his stick, or how he studied things. And he kind of kept an eye on a lot of these guys that he didn't coach before to kind of get a read on what made them tick and stuff like that. So you could tell he was energized by that. And who couldn't be, being part of that great staff, obviously with John Hines as well. And Mike Sullivan, so a guy he knows really well too. He's assistant coach for Tortorella for a long time. But yeah, I think that definitely was one that kind of said, hey, he can still do it. A, B, he still wants to do it. And the taste of winning, that never goes away. Like that, once you win it once, it's kind of an addiction, I guess, when you win a Stanley Cup or win that. And like the guys in Tampa I covered, they're like, I'm like, what motivates you now? You've been to the mountaintop. He goes, the feeling. You don't want to give that cup away. You don't want to give the cup back. Once you have that cup, you don't want to give it back to anybody else. You want to have that feeling forever. And so I can see why guys are motivated after winning one versus once they reach them, they don't really don't sigh of relief. They just feel like they want to do it again and feel that kind of euphoric feeling and celebrate.
Perfect lead into where I wanted to go next, because for Wild fans, I think most of them that follow you closely know, but maybe for some of our listeners that don't know, you for a long time, before you came to Minnesota, covered the Tampa Bay Lightning. You mentioned your relationship with John Cooper, who I love listening to. You saw multiple cup runs. And I wonder, Joe, because you were embedded with that team, you were there for, in the end, probably 9 straight months. How do these teams physically stay upright and stay at a place physically and mentally where they can still go out and perform like we saw in Game 1 last night? You watched it with Tampa. It feels like such a war of attrition through the grind of the season and then the ramping up of the playoffs. How do these teams do it?
Well, they're doing it for each other. I think you find an incredible bond between guys that go on deep runs or win the title, right? And you see how all the lessons that they learned of losing I guess all the Lightning before they won the cup. They lost in a cup final and they lost in a couple of Game 7s in the conference final. So they were swept by Columbus. So before they got there, they had some playoff scars that they were wearing pretty heavy. A lot of doubts about them. So I think as you get closer and closer, you win a round or two and get down to the conference final, you see how close it is. And you see the other guys celebrate. And you're like, okay, this is what it takes. And so I think basically a lot of those guys in those teams were banged up, for the Lightning, the Kucherovs, McDonoughs, stuff like that. But I think they realized that sacrifice it needs to make to get over that edge. You have to kind of want it more than the other guy to get there. A lot of it's will, and they defended their way to those championship runs. They had Kucherov and Point and Stamkos, but if you watch those series closely in those teams, they had like 5 shutouts in the clinching games, and it wasn't just Vasilevsky. You had guys like Coleman and Gore just shutting guys down, and they just beat you to submission, right? So that's how you win at this time of year, and that's why Vegas is so impressive. The way they checked against Colorado, they just suffocated them, and they had a terrific team. So I think that leads to their offense as well. But there's such a feeling when you win a Stanley Cup that all that stuff makes a difference. All this stuff means so much. All this stuff is worth it in the end, the sacrifice, and so that's how they get there. And I remember the crazy story. I'm sure you heard this Wade Gretzky tell before about when the Islanders beat them in the Cup final. It was the early 80s, and they walked over and they saw the locker room for the Islanders and all the ice bags on them. They weren't celebrating. They were just kind of like half dead against the wall, like passed out. Like they're like that's how you're supposed to feel when this is over, right? That's how you're supposed to feel. You're supposed to feel all worn out, dead tired, and like physically and mentally exhausted. But then the whole summer is there to enjoy and revel in the fact that you're the best at what you do in the entire world. So that's, I think, a lesson a lot of teams learn. They go through it and they don't get there.
I love that story by Wayne Gretzky. I'm so glad you brought it up because it was so impactful on his young life, and for him to be the player he was, the leader he was in Edmonton. They would eventually go on to win 4 in a row. That was a tipping point, and I love hearing that because you do see it. You lived it in Tampa. So put us in the building, both the nights that you saw this thing come all the way to the top of the mountain to fruition with those cup titles in Tampa. How late are you at the rink? What do you get to see? I know clearly you don't get to see all of the celebration, but you're right around it. And I imagine that those players and coaches don't even get out of the rink until 2, 3 in the morning because you watch the celebration on the ice, and it seems like it takes these days over an hour to get that done.
Well, if you remember, Gorgie, this was during like COVID, I guess, right? The first cup for the Lightning was in 2020, and they're in the bubble in Edmonton. So that was a different experience overall because I was watching on TV, right? And we were doing Zoom calls and stuff like that. So that was a different way to cover it. I was like watching it on TV with my dad in Michigan, right? You know, and just and covering it and then doing a lot of phone calls and with people around the team and all that stuff like that. And the infamous Kucherov Zoom answer to my question, number one BS, whatever you want to call it, you know, and I asked about stuff like that. So the first one was unique in that respect, covering cup run like from afar, you know, like so you're not around the guys. You know how it is, Gorgie, when you're around a team, you get a better pulse and a feel and the interactions and stuff like that. So it was so very hard to not be at any practices and stuff, right? Only a few people were, and it was very limited access. The next year, they opened things up a little bit more. So it was at home in Tampa when they did win. They closed it out. They won Game 7 against, they closed out Nassau Coliseum. That was the last game I ever played there, right? Before they won a game later at Game 7 against the Islanders. Then they won against Montreal. And it was incredible. Like the fans, like it was just... The place, the whole city was ready to kind of explode for so long after waiting for this long to get a Stanley Cup again. And then to see like we weren't in the locker room, it was just a different time, but we were able to see, my favorite memory, I guess, from that night is I was still writing or finishing up and it's like 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And I see like Stamkos like in his flip-flops and shorts and t-shirt come on the ice, and his dad is in Kucherov skates actually out there skating. And his mom comes out there and they do like a little ceremonial face-off at center ice and they kind of mess around. And so it's just like to see like, you know, and I know him so well and the battle it took for him to get back and play in the first cup and then to get there. It was a cool moment to see like the families coming on the ice like really late after everything's all kind of done and they had their family party and stuff like that. They would go to Stamkos' house after that until like 4 or 5 a.m. for the after party. But at that point to see him and his family, where it all started, you know, do a face-off draw and kind of take pictures and all that stuff like that. That was such a cool moment because, you know, that's something he'll remember for the rest of his life.
And I think for all these players, I think it's easy for fans to forget when you watch the Stanley Cup, you're watching the best of the best. And, you know, you don't always think about the sacrifice that these families made when they were little kids and all the different, whether they're players from the States, from Canada, from overseas, there's a really big journey, a family journey that gets them just to the league, much less to the top of the mountain. And so I'm always taken back by that. And I think that the interview a couple years ago with Paul Maurice, when he looked dead into the camera and was speaking to his mom and dad, anyone who's been around the game understands that. And I think that to me is my favorite part of the Stanley Cup is when I see the family members enjoying it almost as much as the player themselves, knowing that they were such an instrumental part of that journey. You've seen it up close. It's incredible.
It is, and I can guarantee if the Wild win a Stanley Cup, those family members are going to be such a big part of that story and those moments. You know, Spurgeon's parents. You know, and you look at the Folignos and, you know, all that stuff. Like, I think that'd be such a cool moment if they do win the Stanley Cup to have that. I'm doing a fun story for the Athletic in next week on the moment when players put their kids in the Stanley Cup and the moment when like the kids interact with it and all these pictures I've got from over the years of guys like backyard with the kid on the swings and the kid and the cup in the middle of it and the picture in there. So all these kids that have been in the cup since they were like 1 year old and now all of a sudden they're 20 years old. Like that was such a cool moment. Like, those are my favorite things of watching a cup celebration too, is seeing those families, seeing the kids that have no idea how big of a deal this is. I mean, 1 year old and in a Stanley Cup, or eating Fruit Loose out of the cup, or yogurt or ice cream, and so I think that's special for the players too when they're parents, right? And they have that moment of sharing that with their kids. And years later, when they're 20 and go off to college, there could be a picture of them in their dorm wall of him sitting in a Stanley Cup when he still won. So I think the jinxes don't matter when it comes to that. I don't think people worry about touching the kid.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sometimes that goes out the window when kids are involved. And I think it's appropriate that you brought that up, because there were some things in the opening game broadcast of the Cup that I didn't love. I know the sound had some issues throughout the country, but the one thing I know they got right was the intro. It was a 3.5-minute video, and it featured Ray Bourque and his journey and how long it took him to eventually win a Cup in Denver with the Avalanche. And you just brought up the kid factor, and there's a part of that video when the Avalanche had won the Cup and Ray Bourque is on the ice and he's got the Cup and his kids are out there
He's
and they're kind
crying.
of behind him and they're bawling. Oh,
Yeah.
it just ripped my heart right out of my chest. And that really got me. And I think that's what, again, I'm a hockey fan. I love the Stanley Cup. I do not literally care who wins this Cup this year, but I love the moments like that build to that, right? That emotion that's involved. And so we'll swing it, to the Wild side, because, you mentioned some of the family members, and I do think of Jared Spurgeon and Marcus Foligno and some of these veteran players now that are certainly on the back nine of their career. And I know they're close. I realize that right now they're not that far away. So if you're allowed to sit down and Bill Guerin calls you and says, man, you've been around the Cup, Joe. And I know that we're just going to play around here, but he asks you, what would you think I should do either this summer or at the trade deadline next year to get this team better? And Joe, if Bill Guerin's asking, he's understanding, he's doesn't have a lot of pieces to move right now. What would you tell Mr. Guerin?
Well, it's a loaded question, but it's a lot of things. I think, I think what I like about Bill is he's a big swinger. Like, he's going to do it. He's going to go for it. And he knows, like Julian Breezeball was in Tampa, like he would make those big deals at the deadline, give his team the best chance to win. Because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't at the deadline. So you'd rather be damned if you do. That's what he would always tell us. So I think I would emphasize what he already knows, I guess, is you need another game-changing forward. You need another guy up the middle. Eric Stinnett gets injured. Usually at the end of the season, you know how important he is to this team. They need somebody more up the middle. It doesn't have to be an Austin Matthews. Doesn't have to be that guy. It can be another guy maybe below that. But you need some help there, just because you know how the depth was tested so much last year for that. So I think you need that. And I think you need, like last year, they reworked their bottom six a little bit, which I think helped with bringing in McCarron and Foligno. So I think they really need, if they can, to bring back McCarron, because he was such a big factor in their bottom two lines. I think they need a kind of a next wave of their core, right? They need they was the oldest team in the league last year at the end of the season. I know that was partly because of Petrie, partly because of Nick Foligno. But you look at the guys that, the Stankovens and stuff like that, and the Jackson Blakes in Carolina, and other younger guys that are coming through, the Howdens and stuff like that in Vegas. Need that next wave to come through to help those Folignos and such move their way. So I think, I don't think it's anything secret of what the Wild really need, and they know that. The problem is it's hard as hell to get those kind of players, and everybody wants them. So and then the Wild don't have as many trade chips as they did previously. So that's what makes it the most challenging. But the good thing, I guess, is you could say, Gorgie, is they do feel close. And I do think they are close. Like, if they're a healthy team, the Colorado series, I think that it looks a little bit different. I still think they had a mentality that was a little off as far as, after game 3, game 4 was really stunning for me, that how it kind of really fell off and how they couldn't carry it over. And John Hines mentioned in his press conference after the season, the team had struggled after emotional wins during the season at the day after and coming back with it. So that's something they need to kind of help and figure out maturity-wise and mental toughness-wise if they want to go on a deeper run. But they do have a lot of pieces that you need to have a cup contender. And so they are closest they've ever been as a franchise. So that's the good thing. The hard part is the last 5% is the hardest part to get there, right?
Yep.
You get the 75% or 80%, but the hardest part is that last 5% to get over the top, and that's where they're at right now.
So if you're guessing right now, so let's just play the game that a year from right now, so we'll say, June of 27, do the Wild have Gustafsson and Volstead, or one or the other, and who is it?
In June of 20, so next summer.
A year from right now, do they still have both guys, or do they just have one of the two that are still here, and which one, in your eyes, will still be here?
I think they'll have one, and it'll be Volstead.
Interesting. So, in the no
I don't
trade
know that.
thing
I don't know
with-
for sure. I don't know that for sure. I'm just saying, like, that's just like a reading. I'm just saying, like, that would be my guess. Or if he plays like he did in the playoffs and continues that on, it's really hard to move on from a guy like that. So that would be my.
I completely agree. And listen, I think they're both really good goalies. And Bill Guerin's going to have to be kind of creative with the way Gustafson's contract is set up. But guys want to play, and there are so many teams right now, Joe, that look like they're desperate for a goalie. And at the top of the list has to be Edmonton. Like their window is literally, we're watching their cup window close, and they need something. Like they really do need to give that team a chance to win. So I think there's going to be opportunity. I'll be curious to see how it all plays out. If I had to guess, and we're both just guessing, neither one of us knows, but we're around it, I'd guess the same way. And I got nothing against Gus. I think he's fantastic. But the upside that the kid has, the ceiling that Jesper Volstead has, to me, is top 5 in the world. And even though this year I think Carter Hart and Freddie Anderson are more middle of the pack goalies, you mentioned you're running Tampa Bay and Vasilevsky, top 5 in the world. Florida had their 2 cups. Bobrovsky, top 5 in the world. More often than not, if you're going to do it, you're likely going to have a guy that can be an elite goalie. And I think the Wild have found something here. I really do. And I'm excited about it. So with that in mind, Bill Guerin and his crew have a lot of big decisions, and now their crew is going to look a little bit different. I know fans can go read this at The Athletic, and I encourage them to do that. But just give us a sneak peek with the Judd Brackett news.
Yeah, obviously, the big news this last week was their scouting director of amateur scouting, Judd Brackett, left the organization after 5 years to go join the Maple Leafs as an assistant GM and director of player evaluation is what I think his title is there. So obviously people know Judd here. Fans know him pretty well. They've seen a lot of the good picks he's made in the first rounds, especially the Rossies, the Booyams, even like the Ogrins and Yurovs, I think are good picks like that. So, he'll be missed clearly, but I think it was something that we kind of all saw coming a little bit in terms of what Judd wanted versus what the Wild were able to give him. I think Judd wanted a bigger role with the team, like an AGM status. He wanted to have maybe a bigger seat at the table. And I think the Wild felt comfortable with the AGMs that they have with Chris Kelleher and Mike Murray and Matt Sells, who does a lot of stuff in the front office. I think they just wanted him to stick to kind of what his role is and be the best at what he is in scouting. And nothing wrong with Judd wanting to get a bigger opportunity. And I'm sure he got more money in Toronto and a different kind of role. So no hard feelings that way, but it does leave a hole, I think, for the Wild that they need to fill. And talked to Bill Guerin the other day about that, about they're doing their search internally and externally and nationally after the draft to get somebody in that role. So it's very important. It's important to find the right guy because they're in this cup window here. There are not going to be a lot of first round picks to be had here. No easy picks for the scouting director coming up next few years. They're going to be trading those first round picks for win now kind of acquisitions. So you need to find guys that can win rounds 2, 3, 4, 5 and beyond. And there have been a lot of will sees in the prospect pool of guys after the first round for me in the Wild organization. So that's the key for them, is hitting on those middle round, late round ones, because you're not going to have first round picks. You're not going to have early first round picks if you're the Wild, right? If you're playing deep into the summer, a lot of those picks, if the first round, will be later first round picks. So very important hire coming up for Bill Guerin and his staff. I know they have a lot on their plate with the UFAs and signing Quinn Hughes and finding number 1 center. But I think that's also a very important move, I think, coming forward, is finding that director of amateur scouting, a guy they can trust, and a guy that I know Bill Guerin gives a lot of autonomy, because he doesn't have his feet in or hands in all that stuff, amateur scouting. He lets those guys do their job. And so it's a really cool job to have. So if you're a guy who wants to run that team, he'll give you all carte blanche to do what you can to make the right moves, make the right picks.
And what Bill Guerin does better than most is go out and get talent. And when he has it, he makes a push to keep them here. And his big move this summer revolves around locking down Quinn Hughes. And this is more just speculation, Joe, but do you get the feel that this is going to be something that gets done in the summer, not during next season? And B, if you had to guess, how long a deal and how much money are we talking?
For Quinn Hughes, I think more than likely, if it gets done, which I believe it'll be this summertime. I think, you know, Quinn Hughes said all the right things, and I do believe he did really enjoy it here in Minnesota. He loved playing with Boldy and Faber, of course, and Kaprizov, and he really bonded with those guys, and he feels he's a hockey nerd as much a hockey nerd are in the league, and he knows what good teams are and their ceilings. I think he really feels that he can win in Minnesota. But until he signs, there's always gonna be that question. But I do think that they'll have something this summer, and my belief is that it'll be maybe more of a 3-year deal, which gives the Wild 4 years of Quinn Hughes, which they'll take any day of the week. If that lines up with Jack, his brother, who will be a free agent in that many years. So that'd be my guess. It could be different. I mean, I'm sure they'd offer him 7 or 8 or whatever, to keep him here long term, but that would provide some flexibility for both sides, and that would be the cup window for the Wild, right? The next 3-4 years.
Sure.
So I think it could work out for both, but I do think it'll get done. I don't know when, if it'll be July 1st or July 8th. I don't think it'll drag on like the Kaprizov contract did up until training camp. I think if Quinn Hughes decides after contemplating, talking to his family, that he doesn't want to sign longer, he wants to be a free agent in a year, that he will let Bill know. They have a great relationship, and then give them a chance to work on that like he did with Vancouver the year before. So, but I do think that when Quinn Hughes, I think you were there, Gorgie, when he got acquired in mid-December, he brought up unprompted, of how much respect he has for Bill Guerin and how he sacked up and offered that much to get him. And he knows it makes a player feel special when they feel like they're being valued, right? When they feel like he knows Z Williams is a really good player. He knows Rocco Rossi. He knows Lee Moog. And that was their first offer. They went all in on that one. And so I think he said, I'll always remember that, so I think I think that'll be part of his calculation. I think of a good team, great place to live and work, and then a chance to win. So I think that'll be my guess, or my belief is it'll get done this summer. I can't tell you what date it'll be, but hopefully when me and Russo are both on vacation at the same time. So we'll see.
Well, he's got that long vacation with LaPanta, so you're going to have to be on red alert.
He'll be on buses with wine and all that stuff like that. And so
I'd rather be here working. No, I think it's exciting. I do, and I'm with you. Just getting to know Quinn a little bit, and he's a quirky guy. He is not your typical NHL guy. And, I can see completely how being in more of a fishbowl market, and I don't look at Vancouver as like Toronto or Montreal, but it is Vancouver, and it is still a market where they are the team, and he was the guy, and he was probably under a lot more pressure and a lot more scrutiny. In Minnesota, these guys are kind of left alone. Honestly, it's a hockey market. You know this, Joe. These guys can go to the grocery store. Kirill can go to Billy's Sushi, and people are going to leave these guys alone. And then aside from that, you mentioned it. I'm so glad you brought it up. The chemistry and the friendship he has with the guys in that locker room right now. I would be shocked if he didn't do something this summer. I think the 3-year extension makes the most sense. And I'm excited because he's another one of those players that when I watch a game, for years it was Kirill in pieces this year. I think Boldy was that guy, even Faber. But when Quinn Hughes is on the ice, my eyes are just drawn to him. He does things other players can't do.
I think I knew he was really good, not just because he's a Michigan guy like I am, but I knew he was really good. But watching him every day, you have a more of appreciation. Just like when I watch Kucherov every day, I had more appreciation for what he does, the little small things he does to be elite. And, but yeah, I think he's one of those guys that's what I like about some of these star players, especially the Wild have, is they're some of their harder workers on the team. And they're the guys that are like Kaprizov when he's on his game, like game 3 and dominant and never losing a puck battle, like the whole team follows them. They're like, this guy's our hardest worker. This guy's doing this. They all kind of follow. And the same way with Faber, same way with Boldy. And so when those guys are all like that, they all kind of fit. They all have the same brain for it, an idea for it. That's why they fit so well, I think, as a core group. But yeah, Quinn Hughes is, if it's 1A or 1B with Cale Makar, I don't know. And I don't know who's going to get paid more money because their contracts are up at the same time. That'll be another thing to play around with. But he's definitely, I think Kaprizov's the best player the Wild have ever had. But I think if Quinn Hughes is here longer, who knows who's the best player the Wild ever had, if that case.
And I think Boldy's going to throw his
absolutely.
his
Boldy.
name in the hat too. I mean, that's the exciting part for Wild fans right now. As I look at this roster, and in my eyes, I'll include Faber on what he's done on these big stages, including the Olympics last year. I look at Faber and Quinn. I look at Boldy and Kirill. We have 4 bona fide superstars, and I believe, and I've been saying this all year long, and I'm not going to back down. I think the goaltender they have right now in Jesper Wallstedt has real potential to be that guy, to be an absolute superstar, top 5 in the world at that position. He's not there yet. He's not. He's trending. And I think with his size, his athletic ability, and most importantly, Joe, the mind that he has, like you're around it just like I am. Like this kid wants to be in the big spot with all the pressure on him, and he's unafraid. To me, that is a rare quality in a young goalie.
Oh, it's you can't teach that, right? You either have it or you don't, and you want to have it. And like he when he played like crap in game 1 against Colorado, he sat there, he owned it, he sat there. I'm like, hey, but he didn't make it a big deal. He didn't make it. He wasn't like scared or like, oh, I'm lost. It was like, hey, like they had some good shots. Like I could have done this at the 3rd goal, but I'll be fine. I didn't worry that this guy could be shaken the rest of the series. And he came back after to game 3 and played well. And then obviously the series wasn't his fault that they lost that series. He gave them every bit of a chance. And so I think he has that it factor as a goalie that you want, a guy who has a short memory, but a guy who's just mentally tough and has that swagger to him. And I like swagger in players. I want people that players have personality, right? I mean, we can't complain people are boring, and then when they say something fun or like they do a celebration, all of a sudden complain about it. Like let them be themselves and show their personality, and fans will love them more for that.
I agree. This is the last question on the broadcast. It's more of a conversation here on this show, and I know I've got to get you out on time, and I'm going to do that. But I thought it was really, really special that Gary Bettman, in that press conference to kick off the Stanley Cup final, mentioned our dear friend and colleague we lost this year in Jesse Pearson. You know, we're all kind of family, Joe. We all do the same thing. We're at practice every day, game days. We're in the same routine. We're in the mess all together. After the game, we're all asking questions, sharing that press conference space together. And Jessie was unique. She was special. She was like kind of our kid sister. I thought it was unbelievably awesome that Gary Bettman brought that up. And it still hurts. And when you see the picture, it's real. And it reminds you of that pain. But damn, was that cool.
It was really cool and really well-deserved. And like I tell you, I've been really impressed all around the league, every team. I went on the road trip after that happened, the tragedy, and like every place I went to, there was a seat next to me with flowers and a bouquet. And then people asking me, hey, how are you doing? How are you guys doing? Or how are you holding up? And like, you know, it was a daily reminder, which was tough, but it's also, I'm glad people at a national level recognize, you know, we're all in it's a hockey world is such a small fraternity, right? Even players, coaches, and everything like that's a small world. And so it did feel good to see that she was recognized and understanding of how much she loved the game, the people in the game. And it doesn't feel real to me still. I want to text her to go play golf, or I want to text her, you know, like to Reeds and like watch the game. Like she was just such a fun loving, like a kid sister, like you said. And I think to see her memory kind of carried on in a lot of different ways is special. I know we won't forget her for a long time here. And so I think that'll be something we can kind of carry forward in our own way of just having that spirit of not being such a grump at the rink, right? You know, if you can stop a little bit of smile
on your face. We're getting paid to watch hockey, right? That's what she would have said. Like, we're getting paid to watch hockey. How bad can it be?
Yeah, that's my takeaway from it, because she had kids and stressful like life trying to get things going like anybody else does who's has a lot of juggling a lot of different things, and she always came there, and no matter what she had to do, she was just having fun, enjoying it, and then take her kids for ice cream and do this. Like I just really enjoy her as a mom and her as a professional and doing it all. So I really admire that. And we talked about our kids a lot when we do car ride back from the golf tournament and all that stuff like that. So thankfully the Commissioner Bettman put her out there, and we'll all still keep her in our hearts as we go along here.
Very, very well stated, Joe. Appreciate your time today. He is Joe Smith. Find his work at The Athletic and at theathletic.com. Joe, look forward to our text conversations throughout the summer. Maybe see you out at Canterbury Park, but I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Absolutely love that, Gorgie. Bring me out to Canterbury. I've never been out there before, so we should go out there one afternoon. I'd love to come out there with you and see the sights and see how you work your magic. So I'd love to take me out there.
We'll do that this summer. I hope you take me up on that. Bring the family out. We'll have a good time. He is Joe Smith. I am Kevin Gorg, and I will be back after a quick break to put a bow on this week's edition of the show. All right, final segment of the show. As always, I'll remind you, if you've got a friend, a family member, anybody in the business world that wants to be a part of the show, please ping me at Gorgomatic21 on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, at Gorgomatic21 for that. And any recommendations for people you'd like to hear from this summer on the show. I had a chance to play in Randy Shaver's charity golf event on Monday, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight cancer, which is awesome. In my group was former Wild winger Zach Parisi. Had a great time with Zach, 6 hours out there talking about his kids, coaching, his time in the league, all that great stuff. So Zach and I talked about having him on the show this summer. We're certainly going to do that. It was great to see him and great to see guys like Nate Prosser and other media moguls, Marty Gellner, Dave Schwartz, who's been on this show, obviously, and of course, Justin Guard. It was just a really cool tournament. We played in the morning shift. There were a bunch of people that played in the afternoon. Joe Mauer was out there, Johnny Randall. It was such a cool thing. Randy Shaver just has done a hell of a job with that tournament over at Rush Creek. And if down the road you want to be a part of it, they always played on the first Monday in June, kind of to kick off summer, get the golf season going in full swing. The course was spectacular with some of the new improvements out there at Rush Creek, the new cart path. But it's always been a really, really good test of golf and a worthwhile cause down the road if you're inclined to get involved. But ping me at Gorgomatic21 and we'll have some fun here this summer. Of course, I'm out at Canterbury Park. Joe and I just talked about that. You can always come say hi in the paddock. I'm down where the horses get saddled with my wireless mic, analyzing races. Thursdays at 5, Saturdays at 5, Sundays at 1 o'clock. You can see the horsies. Come say hi to myself, Paul Allen, and a cast of hundreds out in Shakopee. Thanks for listening. Special thanks to our producer, Alex Haugen, for making this happen. And once again, we'll chat with you next week right here on Wooden Sticks.